Hello, everyone. So, in honor of 4th of July, I'd like to talk about something a little different, and I'll apologize in advance for any popping you hear outside from fireworks and festivities. I want to talk about police shootings, kind of generally, particularly uh, the shooting of Philando Castille and that officer being acquitted. And after that happened, the dash cam footage was released. And knowing the basic facts of the case was bad enough, but when you look at this video, you begin to see that this shooting was not justified, really, like at all. Um, when I watched it, I learned that there was another officer on the scene on the passenger side, and Officer Yanez, the man who shot Philando Castile, was on the driver's side, and it's just ridiculous, in my opinion, to think that Yanez was really in danger when you can hear in the video Philando say that he has a firearm. You can hear him kind of faintly saying he's not reaching for it. I have gone over it several times, and it seems to be that's what he's saying. Yanez was jittery the whole time. Um, he was answering too quick to even seem like he knew what Philando was saying. It seemed like he wasn't listening to him at all. And yeah, I mean, it should be obvious at this point. It was likely an impulse reaction based on racial profiling. He was clearly too off the rails to be a cop. He was, after shooting, he was screaming and clearly having this panic attack, going like "fuck, fuck, fuck," and like you can't be someone who's gonna do that if you're a cop. You can't have that kind of emotional reaction in that way. I mean, like, I understand it's a hard job and sometimes you have tough decisions to make and whatnot, but this was someone who, watching the video, it kind of made me think like maybe he wasn't thinking about what he was doing and he regretted shooting. It was more or less, just an instinct for him, and like I say, like he wasn't thinking. But that's exactly the problem. Like he had to have been trained better or just smarter in that situation to not shoot someone who tells you that they have a firearm, they're trying to be compliant with you, and it's ridiculous. I mean, and then you hear him say some contrived excuse about how he smelled marijuana in the car, and so because of that, because he smelled marijuana in the car and his girlfriend and his daughter was in the car, then all bets are off. This guy could be a crazy person and he's gonna go on some shooting spree. I don't know. So that to me sounds super like put together in his head. Like, I don't think that was a real thought. There's no way he really pieced that together in that amount of time that it took to shoot him. I really, he was covering his ass, I think, when he said that. It's not the cop's job to act on unconfirmed information in this way. I mean, of course they have to assess situations where they aren't privy to all the information, and it involves a lot of quick decisions, like I said. But who really thinks that this was necessary for his safety? Like I just don't understand. Like, what was Castile supposed to do? Was he? He said he had a gun. He was, well, according to Diamond Reynolds, his girlfriend, he had one of those inside holsters. I've seen it before, where the gun's like inside the pants, and he's struggling to get to his wallet because this gun is there. So he's telling the officer, "I have a firearm. I'm not reaching for it. I'm reaching for my ID." He had already handed him the registration, I guess, as it were, and I just don't get like what was he supposed to do to avoid getting shot? I don't think there was anything he could have done. If Philando was a white man, I don't think he would have been shot. It's just that simple, really. And also, what about the notion that you're shooting into a car with another person, a child in the back seat who, um, I'm trying to get the timeline right. The the daughter was, or the son, I don't know, but the child was basically climbing around in the back seat, and then I think just before Yanez fired off like 7 shots, um, the little girl sat down, and Diamond Reynolds was saying like, sit down, like I don't want you to move it around, but like still you don't know that situation very well. Like I mean, you're shooting into a car with a kid there who's not really secured, like into a car seat really. Like what about the danger in that? Like they talk about smoking weed, like no, no, no. And yeah, so NRA members are very upset over this. They're upset that the NRA, the lobbyists, I guess themselves, are not speaking out because Philando Castille had a right to conceal carry. So, where's the appropriate response? I mean, the NRA they can't really change the judicial outcome of this. Like they can only basically state their opinion. But yeah, people are upset that they aren't coming to his defense because they feel like Philando was someone who was just kind of indicative of people who have concealed carry, who are just everyday people. I mean, this guy was well regarded in his community. He worked as like a lunch server in a school, and apparently he was very good with the kids, and a lot of adults spoke highly of him. So, I mean, with the NRA not taking the appropriate response on this, I would say, do what you have to do. Like, stop donating to them or paying membership, whatever it is. Do whatever you can to defund them, because that's the only way they're going to respond. The only way you get their attention is when you start hitting them where it hurts with the money. So I watched an old clip of Bill Maher interviewing Quentin Tarantino from 2015. For those who don't remember, Quentin Tarantino started going around with Black Lives Matter, marching with them in the streets in New York, also going on like the talk show circuit, speaking out about these issues of police shootings, and he was very hit hardly by police and saying like, oh, he's trying to denigrate all officers. Well, that wasn't what he was saying. But they watched this clip on real time, and it shows a clip of a PA officer, Lisa Merkel is her name, and she tased this guy, this 50-year-old guy. Supposedly he had run away from her. I think she pulled him over because he had some kind of expired tag. And then she tased him, and she's screaming at him like, show me your hands, show me your hands. And you can see, like, I don't know, they said he was reaching for his jacket, but like he's freaking being tased and like rolling around. Like, I don't know how he's really like doing an actual action there. I don't know. It could just be moving around. She's tasing him, and then finally she shoots him twice, and he's laying there on the ground. He's being tased while she shoots him. So, what is the real danger here to that officer? In that situation, that is clearly abusing the police authority that they're given. We are raised in a society now where like we just think police have a license to kill, and even if they get it wrong, it's better than not. Like, no, you can't do things like that and just even if you don't really have a conscious effort to like abuse authority, like, oh, I'm gonna go out and just kill people. If you're the kind of person who's like really petrified in that situation, then yeah, you shouldn't be a cop too. The there's the people that are the bullies and abuse their authority really badly, and there's also people that overreact, and they're both not good. They both have to be dealt with. I mean, cops want to be portrayed as brave, but if you think for 1 second that they're not acting in a courageous way and you want to call them out, then you're denigrating all of them. That's not the way that I think people are really talking about it. That they want to approach it as the institution itself is kind of creating this environment, and some individuals, it turns out, do things that are very horrendous, either on purpose or not, but it has to be dealt with. I mean, this attitude that cops always defend their own is detrimental as well. I mean, it honestly is just more of a divide, that cops are just so much more prone to defend their own no matter what the circumstances are. What we need is more community oversight, more transparency. There has to be a willingness to solve the problem, but some cops, I'm sure, would not have you think that there is any problem, at least on their end. They'll say anything that they want, Black Lives Matter, any group, or just, sometimes they'll say, like, oh, black on black crime, whoa, well, yeah, I mean, like, the facts may be the facts, but like that environment is essentially a recipe for disaster. I mean, the war on drugs is just a disaster, and you've given the power to the black market and gangs when you've decided that this is going to be a criminal issue that you deal with. I mean, people are not going to stop doing drugs. They're not going to stop doing these things just because they're illegal. I mean, that time has proven that to be true. So anyone who is like still trying to ramp up this war on drugs is so misguided, in my opinion. Um, the attitudes have changed, and it's something you have to not be shy about calling out. I mean, cops are so. I don't want to say all cops. I should be clear. Not all cops, but some of them are just too quick to go to the gun and too quick to defend their defend their life over others. It's as if they're. I mean, I used to think that there was this assumption that cops put their life on the line, and they reserve deadly force except for when they know it's absolutely necessary. But now it seems like any inkling of danger is justifiable grounds to use deadly force. And I mean, body cams are things that are helping the situation, but it's clearly not enough. These things are still happening. You have militarization of police, which I think more or less it increases the divide. It makes it so that these people look like an army. It's like an occupying force a lot of times. When you look at Ferguson and the shooting of Michael Brown, I mean, they circled the wagons and try to hide all of the shady activities that have been going on in that police department. They relied on traffic stops and finding people to to meet budgetary needs. So these things didn't have much to do with the Michael Brown shooting so much, but they knew, if people were going to start looking into their police department, they're going to find these things out. So it was eventually discovered, but in the meantime, you had the police, in massive numbers in the streets. And yeah, I mean, people would be like, oh yeah, the rioters and the looters, you gotta protect people, right? But look, if you really think the cops are only going after those people, then you're ridiculous. Like, that's obviously not what was going on. We've seen the videos. We've seen how they just surrounded people and blocked off peaceful protesters. So you also had a character assassination of Michael Brown, focusing all this attention on him supposedly stealing a box of cigarillos. I say supposedly because I read something that came out later that said like maybe what happened was some kind of drug exchange type thing. But that's beside the point, because Darren Wilson's story for why he stopped Michael Brown had nothing to do with the stealing of the box of cigarillos. Darren Wilson supposedly went up to him because he was jaywalking. So obviously, if you're jaywalking, that's a cause for deadly force, right? Am I wrong? There are countless other incidents too. I mean, as I'm sure you know. I'll just go through them briefly here. Samuel DuBose, someone who was pulled over. You never know with these situations. It's always some kind of weird traffic thing, like their brake light was out or something. So this cop pulls him over, and I think he suspected him of drunk driving too. But you could see in the video, it was a body cam video. You could see in the video, his hands were there. I could see it, and he told him to turn his car off. Samuel DuBose, like, he just turned his car on in that moment right before he got shot. So he's like, turn your car off, and he's like, I'm not doing nothing. So whatever. The guy, like, Samuel DuBose, like, I don't know, like, maybe he could have been arrested for something. I don't know, but you don't resort to shooting him. And what ended up happening was the car was on, and he shot him, and the car went down the road and crashed into a stop sign, I think. So that's an example of a cop being completely reckless and possibly harming more people. In that instance, the cop was indicted, but the cops that they never get the appropriate punishment, in my opinion. Like, he was fired from the police department. They've had like 2 mistrials at this point. My guess is if he gets anything, this cop, it's not going to be a very harsh sentence at all. Terrence Crutcher was killed being pulled over, and there was like 3 or 4 cops there, and you see there's like a helicopter footage of this one, and you see Terrence Crutcher walk to his car, his hands up. He walks kind of like behind the door, I believe, of his car, or walks by the door. And then all of a sudden the cop shoots him. But it didn't look like there was, like, he was grabbing for anything. It didn't look like there was any kind of foul play there. The cops, when you look at the cops standing there, they're just like standing there like normal, and then all of a sudden, bang, and they act like they're not even fazed by the whole thing. They're just like standing there. I don't get how people can do these things and honestly go to sleep at night. You have Freddie Gray, who was, I don't know the entire details of how he ended up in the custody of the cops, but for whatever reason, he had a switchblade. That was his big crime. Yeah, they're illegal, whatever. I've known people who had switchblades before, and I mean he lived in Baltimore. Like, whatever, dude. You have a switchblade. Let's move on. But yeah, whatever. You gotta follow the law. They put this guy in the back of a van. Took him on a rough ride, they call it. He was just going back and forth in this van, and they were driving rough on purpose, and he went into a coma and died. So like that one was very unusual, I think. It wasn't a shooting, so Then you have Walter Scott. This is, a very classic example of someone. He got pulled over. He ran away from the cops, and I already know. Look, people who are older in the older generation, they they say like, oh, you can't run from the cops. You can't disobey a cop in any way. Otherwise, it's your ass. Well, look, I don't know why Walter Scott ran away. It was probably because he was afraid of the fact that he was black, and he didn't want to be, marginalized in that way. But regardless of why he ran away, again, you don't go to deadly force automatically. And what happened was there was video of this. He was running away from the cop unarmed, had nothing in his hands. He wasn't reaching for anything. He was running away, and the cop shoots him in the back. And not only that, the story was that Walter Scott was apparently reaching for his taser, but then video surfaced of the cop planting the taser near the dead body. So these are not brave acts, okay? The cops that want to shout Blue Lives Matter all the time, you got to own these. The facts of this, you can't just ignore it. And I think that's what they do. I mean, I don't. The thing that I don't understand is, do they know all of this information and these facts and then are just okay with it? Or maybe they're ignorant. I don't know. But this idea of blue lives is a myth because people choose to be cops. You can't choose to be black. That's the difference. Cops are needed in society. I think anyone who disputes that, and I've heard people kind of dispute that, like, that shouldn't be taken seriously. You do need cops in modern civilization. But just because you want to be a cop doesn't mean, or even if you pass the physical requirements, you don't automatically get to be one just because you want that. I mean, the psychology is perhaps the most important part of it. Um, we live in a world where the norm is that cops defend their life at any cost, like I say. So questioning that authority to them is beyond reason, and that's a big problem. They need to be held to a higher standard. They can't. It's like all of a sudden they turn into snowflakes every time you try to question what they do. And it's like, oh, you've never been there. You've never been in that situation. Yeah, well, to be perfectly honest, I'm not in that situation because I need people that are stronger than me to make the hard decisions. So, you know, yes, I mean, there is a police academy, but the research shows that, they spend a huge majority of their time um, just training and focusing on their weapon and less on the de-escalation tactics. And I think one of the big takeaways is this dynamic that cops have. I mean, it's always so antagonistic. And I think that will partially always be there. But there has to be some level of decency and trying to treat the job more like a public service, like you're not out to find someone or just like catch them at something.